Welcome to the next video in this series, entitled Prove It. In my last video, I told you a little about my history online and what it's enabled me to do with my life. I've travelled more and I've worked where I want. I've worked when I want as well, and also with whom I want. But of course I do still have to work. You saw how I have no special powers nor skills which were ideally suited to starting a business online. And in truth, when I started out, I didn't even know whether it was possible. But I was prepared to give it a try. Today, I want to show you some proof of what I've been able to do, as well as share with you the experiences of a couple of my former students. Before I go on, I need to tell you, if you haven't figured it out already, that this sequence of videos is aimed at those of you who might be looking to capitalise on your love of racing and turn that into a business, either part-time or full-time. If that's not where you are, then feel free to listen on, but you may not get the most benefit from this video. Now, again, before we go any further, it's important for you to understand that I present these numbers as a means of illustrating the art of what is possible, and not as a means of gloating, of course. In point of fact, there are people who make far more than I do from similar businesses, due to them just having a more aggressive approach to marketing. That's not a criticism of them necessarily, but more an observation about how I choose to run my own business. Okay, with that said, let me take you back to when I first started. It was September 2006, and I was a clueless newbie. Like I said last time, I created a product and, first through Google's AdWords and then through a few joint ventures with other people in the industry, I managed to make sales of £11,016 in the first 6 months. Now, that's far from a fortune, but for a bloke with no previous experience, this was all the proof I needed that it was possible to offer a decent product and get paid a few quid into the bargain. Since then, I've got a lot savvier at how to present and promote my offerings, and as a consequence I've been able to offer people who love racing stuff far greater value through the economies of scale each year. Here are just a few of my promotions. Now at this point, I also want to make clear that I didn't just figure this out all by myself. No, not at all. Far from it, in fact. Rather, I invested a lot of money to understand more about how to be better at creating great products and offering them to interested people. In fact, I estimate that I've spent around about £20,000 over the last 6 years, and I haven't regretted a penny of that. I've learned from some serious experts such as Tim Lowe, Ed Dale and Frank Kern, as well as many less well-known teachers and experts. That works out at about £3,500 each year on average, and to be honest, I probably should have spent more on my education. The value of those investments? Well, I've pulled in about £650,000 in the course of these last 6 years. Not a fortune, and obviously I've had expenses to pay, like web design, JV costs, writers and so on. But still, you can see that the return on investment, allied to some good old-fashioned elbow grease on my part, more than justifies that cost of my education. But enough about me. You already know about my track record, and you know that my products sell out pretty much every time now, as do those of my students. They're popular for a reason, and I'm extremely proud of my position in the community, a position which I would never take for granted. So let's look at some of my students now. I first offered to show other people what I do and how I do it way back in June 2009. Amongst those in the room that day were Gavin Priestley and David Peat. David runs his horse profile service from a sunny part of France, in between mowing lawns and trimming hedges. He loves gardening and he loves horses, and he gets paid for both. In fact, when I published a service of his back in 2009, Flat Racing Profiles, I ended up cutting him a cheque for £9,750 and 6p for his share. Gavin took over my first product, Trainer Track Stats, and has since begun his own franchise called Festival Trends. TTS has been responsible for a £50,000 plus launch in its time, and Festival Trends accrued £26,835 in its first year, and a good bit more since. In June 2010, I made a similar offer, and amongst those who took me up on my offer this time were Kieran Ward and Phil Eady. Kieran has gone on to offer a couple of very successful services, successful both for his clients and for him. In fact, I'd like to play you a short conversation I had with him just a couple of days ago. I'm joined on the line today by Kieran Ward of Make Your Betting Pay and the Morning and Evening Value Services. Kieran's a former student of mine, and he's kindly agreed to share a few thoughts on his experiences to date. So, hi Kieran.
Hi Matt, thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for agreeing to have a chat. Just to start with, can you give us a bit of a background on how you got into this and what first attracted you to the idea of building a business in this way?
Yeah, I mean, I've spent most of my life either self-employed or generally looking for a way out of a fairly short-term convenience job. Never really stayed in any particular job for very long, or felt that I'd found something I could do for, a long period of time. So throughout my life I've been a fairly avid gambler, particularly on the horses. I reached a point about 10 years ago where I was able to support myself pretty much from gambling alone, and that's generally what I've done since. But I was always looking to set up a business related to my interest in horses and gambling, because gambling's great, but there can be fallow periods, and it's not the kind of secure income, for example, that banks are generally prepared to lend on.
No, indeed.
Yeah, so I always thought that an internet business was a perfect model, sort of fairly cheap to set up, low overheads, that kind of thing. So when I saw the thing you were offering, it seemed a perfect marriage of like my two interests, really.
Absolutely. All right, great. And what previous sort of internet or technical experience did you have?
Pretty much none. I mean, I did all my betting online. I'd done some bits and pieces selling on eBay and Amazon, but no technical skills at all. No.
Okay.
Completely cold,
right.
No experience.
Yeah, good. And I think that's great, because I think a lot of people out in cyberspace there will be in a similar position, maybe sold a few things on eBay, but never really taken charge of their own sort of online business in their own space. So that's great. Obviously, starting from zero experience then, or next to zero experience, there will have been some challenges in your startup phase.
Yeah.
Thinking back, what were you most worried about, and what did you do to mitigate those concerns?
I think before I started, I was pretty concerned about the technical aspects of it all. But it's all kind of set up for you to do, really. You don't need any technical skills to set up a website or any of those kind of things. Anything that I did struggle with, you were there to kind of help me. And I guess my biggest fear was just not taking action on it. Obviously, I've bought manuals about internet businesses in the past and made some sort of cursory efforts to put things into action, and never really got anywhere and dropped them fairly quickly. So obviously that was a concern for me. But where this was very different was that you were there in like a mentoring and tutoring capacity, and it kind of held me to task. And it was almost, I was too embarrassed not to do it because you were there.
Yeah, well, and that's great, and I think that's a really good answer from my perspective, because it is one of the things that distinguishes this opportunity from others, is that I'm never going to go around emailing people to ask them why they haven't done such and such, but I am always there to respond. If you go through a new process you've never done before, you get to stuff that you don't necessarily understand, or you've tried it and it hasn't worked out quite as you expected it to. And chances are I've been in that situation before, and will be able to help you get to the next stage. So yes, absolutely, it's much more interactive, an opportunity than your average sort of manual or DVD set. I think that's an important point. So thank you for mentioning that.
No problem.
So talking about when you sort of first applied the processes and the techniques that I talk about, what kind of results were you expecting to get from that?
Well, on my first launch, I really didn't expect a great deal. It was I first set it up in a way just to build an audience. You were fairly careful about managing my expectations around any sort of financial rewards to come from it. But I mean, it massively exceeded what I was expecting. I was selling a manual for £1 with an option of having the emails, the selections emailed to you on a daily basis for 6 months, and I think that was going to cost £97. And on that basis, I did 15 grand's worth of sales in a week. And I was really, to be honest, I was expecting maybe 1,000 to 2,000, because the main part of the exercise was to build an audience. And of course, in the process of doing that, I built a list of people who come and read my blog regularly, of probably close to 6,000 people, all within a week.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, again, you know, that's a really important point, that obviously making a few quid out of your first try is a you know, a big bonus, but that's what it is. It's a bonus, because what you really want to try to achieve is to demonstrate your credibility to people, and have them request to hear from you when you've written on your blog. And you know, you do a great job at Make Your Betting Pay now, and I imagine a number of the listeners on this call will already know you from there, so that's fantastic. Okay, a bit of a self-indulgent question on my part, probably, but if at all, how would you say this has changed your life?
Well, I would say dramatically. I mean, I'm still betting for the majority of my income, but I mean, really, I've only got my first year's figures for the business, but I've made, you know, a full-time income basically from probably doing a couple of hours work every other day, I guess, on the blog. And all I've been doing for that is recommending betting products that I'm either using or I'm about to use myself, and never at any point do I have to compromise my principles on the kind of things that I would promote. And just by doing that, it's enabled me to build a legitimate income. I think it's a viable, growing business, and hopefully it's an asset that's growing in value year on year. So yeah, it's changed my life dramatically.
Brilliant. I'm very pleased to hear that. I mean, I know, you know, we speak fairly regularly, so I hear about your progress, and I'm really delighted with how it's been going for you, and that's fantastic that you kind of confirm that on the call here.
Thank you.
Just in closing, then, there will be people who are listening to this who may be at a point in their lives when they're thinking about maybe making a change or what to do next. What thoughts have you got for them regarding maybe building a similar business to the one that you and I run?
I think it's absolutely doable, and it would be much easier for anybody if they were to seek your help on it. There are points while I was doing it where I probably would have given up, were it not for the fact that I could call upon you, and you'd be there and get back to me sort of almost instantly, to be honest, and we'd work around the issue that had arisen. It's a fantastic business. It's a real lifestyle business, but there is the opportunity to earn a very, very good income from it. And I would encourage anybody to do it, as long as they're prepared to take action. Go for it. Brilliant.
That is really good to hear, Kieran, and again, I really appreciate your time on the call. So we'll wrap it up there, and thanks very much for sharing your thoughts and experiences.
No problem, Matt. Thanks for having me along.
Okay, bye for now.
Cheers, bye.
So that was Kieran. No real previous experience. He'd tried and failed with a few things before, but he's been able to build up a great business in a very short space of time using the methods I've showed him. Then last year I made a slightly different offer based around the same theme. It had been the case that for some people who were extremely interested in learning how to start a business in the online betting space, that they just couldn't get physically to the seminar. As a consequence of this, I recorded my last live seminar and had it professionally mastered so that those for whom distance was a factor could also get involved. I was also able to offer a heck of a lot more inside that box that I couldn't than I could at the seminar, but more on that anon. Suffice it to say that the move from live seminar to home study had no impact on the success of students. Indeed, last year's group included Nick McKenna and John Cutts. Nick is responsible for a number of co-promotions with his business partner at Cleve Racing, as well as a highly successful product launch of his own. And John offered the hugely popular Bet to Win service towards the end of last year, which generated profits in excess of £20,000. The home study course was also a big help for football trader Steve Brown, who set up his Goal Profits website on the back of it. Steve has been steadily building a great reputation for himself in the football trading space, and he's used my training as the backbone for that. Okay, by now you'll know that this stuff obviously works, and you've heard how I've been able to help people of all ability levels to achieve goals they scarcely believe possible. And in my next video I'm going to reveal exactly what I've got to offer, who it will suit and what it will cost. So do stay tuned for that in a couple of days' time. This is Matt Bisogno saying thanks for listening and bye for now.